One day, a naked statue suddenly appeared in the middle of the city. People around it began gathering to watch, pulling out their phones to capture this strange moment. As the sun rose and the temperature increased, the material on the statue started to melt, making the scene even more bizarre. It was later discovered that the statue was made from a living person. This was the second such incident in the city, and the police still had no leads. The serial killer was still on the loose, but no one expected that the young man standing before them would be the one to solve these cases. That young man was our protagonist, Dong-soo. That night, Dong-soo was walking alone in a dark alley, singing a song. Suddenly, a black car appeared at the corner, and out stepped a man named Eric, an organ hunter holding an axe. Dong-soo noticed him, but what he didn't know was that another person was waiting for him. That person grabbed Dong-soo tightly by the neck and choked him until he lost consciousness. Dong-soo was then taken to an unlicensed clinic, where the doctor intended to remove his eyes to sell them. But what happened next was very strange. His eyes were removed, but his body could still sense his surroundings. As soon as the doctor answered a phone call, blood began to return to Dong-soo's eyes, and the wound on his chest started to form fleshy structures that gathered together and miraculously healed the wound. He tried to reattach his left eye, and indeed, red structures emerged from it and reattached it in place. This terrified the doctor, who quickly ran to find his assistant. Dong-soo jumped out of the window, but his right eye fell along the way. Yet he could still see through the eye he had lost, which ended up in the possession of a man sitting at a desk. This person seemed to have an interest in astrology. On the desk, there was a notebook with the initials PL written on it, and paintbrushes scattered across the table, indicating that this person was likely an artist. As soon as this person applied dots to the eye, Dong-soo's vision from his right eye began to weaken and eventually disappeared. Meanwhile, the city was witnessing a series of murders. The killer would place the bodies of women in artistic poses on the streets, making them look like sculptures. At first, people thought they were works of art and began photographing and sharing them until the bodies started to bleed and tears of blood began to flow from their eyes. That's when the police noticed. The method of killing was strange and brutal. The killer would carve letters into the bodies as if signing them, like an artist signing their work. The PL initials were likely linked to the person who had taken Dong-soo's eye. This was the second crime of its kind, and there was no connection between the victims. The police still had no leads. However, there was someone named Zhang Go in the police department. His grandmother was a famous witch, and every time Zhang Go found an important clue, his nose would bleed. This wasn't a secret in the department. Everyone there saw his nosebleeds as a sign that the case would be solved. Zhang Go decided to start his investigation by tracing the source of the material used on the bodies to see who was selling it. Meanwhile, Dong-soo experienced no changes after losing his eye and continued his work as usual. That day, some thugs gathered to cause trouble and harass his boss at work. Dong-soo tried to intervene and stop them, but the thugs beat him up. One of them pulled out a knife and cut off his ear. The thugs were frightened and ran away afterward, but in reality, Dong-soo had a secret ability he had known about for a long time. He could heal any injury to his body, even severe fractures. Fleshy structures emerged from his severed ear, reattaching and restoring it to its original state. Dong-soo considered this ability a burden, but for organ hunters, it was a golden business opportunity. After hearing the doctor's description of what happened that night, the organ hunters began searching for Dong-soo everywhere. Eric overheard them in secret and knew everything about their conversation. Dong-soo started feeling pain in his eye and realized that this situation couldn't continue. Dong-soo decided to retrieve his eye and began searching for Eric, the person who had kidnapped him that day. However, Dong-soo didn't know that the organ hunters were desperately searching for him and were determined to find him. When they saw him approaching, they weren't going to let him go. In the narrow street, Dong-soo was trapped, and given his situation, he had no choice but to temporarily abandon his search for his eye and try to escape. Luckily, he wasn't afraid of death. He ran quickly toward the train tracks to distract the hunters chasing him. On the other side, Hyang was secretly following him and appeared as if to help him, but in reality, he was leading him into a dead end. Hyang pulled out a knife and injured Dong-soo's leg, but as usual, the wound healed rapidly. At that moment, they heard footsteps at the end of the street. Hyang grabbed Dong-soo and pushed him against the wall. Dong-soo fell onto a parked car, his body twisting in a strange way. But moments later, he stood up and ran quickly down the narrow street. Hyang smiled with satisfaction. The next day, a new victim appeared near a company. The employee, San-hee, was covered in the strange material and displayed in the street like a piece of art, bearing the PL signature. San-hee rushed to work, her mood unaffected by the body in front of the company, because she was happy that her crush, Jang Kop, had returned from his trip. Now they could spend time together again. As they headed to lunch, San-hee began humming a tune, which turned out to be the song Dong-soo had uploaded online without anyone knowing. Jang Kop felt pain in his right eye when he heard the tune. Dong-soo was able to see again through his right eye and discovered that Jang Kop was the person who had undergone an eye transplant. That night, the visual connection between Dong-soo and his eye returned. Through his eye, Dong-soo saw Jang Kop's art notebook, which bore a signature that seemed familiar to him. Dong-su searched online and discovered that the person who had his right eye was a serial killer and a psychopath. At the same time, Jang-go was working late at the police station, thinking about the crime scene photos. By chance, he noticed that Dong-su had a patch over his eye. At that moment, his nose started bleeding, signaling that he was on the right track. The police quickly began searching for Dong-su. The next day, using the clues obtained through his connection with his eye, Dong-su arrived in front of Jang Kop's company. He saw San-hee passing by and decided to ask her about what was happening. However, she found his behavior strange and quickly entered the company to alert her colleagues. During lunch, San-hee was eating with Jang Kop, and they were surprised when the ringtone of the delivery man's mobile was the same song written by Dong-su. Jang Kop felt pain in his eye again when he heard the song. At that moment, Dong-su tried to make the call again and saw that the other person was sitting in a rice soup restaurant. But rice soup restaurants were everywhere, so he couldn't pinpoint the exact location. At that moment, the call reconnected, and San-hee was singing Dong-su's song. At that moment, Jang Kop looked at the advertisement screen inside the restaurant, and Dong-su finally figured out the name of the place. When he arrived, he coincidentally passed by Jang Kop. At that moment, Dong-su spotted San-hee, but her male colleague was sitting in the wrong spot. Dong-su approached them immediately, and the people around thought he was a strange or suspicious person. The male colleague grabbed him, and Dong-su tried to explain that he was just looking for someone. He asked San-hee about the person who had been sitting in front of her, but her colleague angrily said that no one had been sitting there and kicked Dong-su out of the place. Dong-su couldn't wait for the next call and decided to try his luck at a fortune-telling shop because the criminal had a zodiac symbol on his computer. Dong-su noticed that the symbol formed by the letters was reducing. He asked the fortune teller about its meaning, and she told him it represented Pluto and that the victim's dates of death coincided with the alignment of Pluto and Venus. Venus symbolizes beauty and art, while Pluto represents destruction and rebirth. These two symbols matched Jang Kop's style of killing. The next alignment of the two planets was set to occur on December 25th and end on January 6th. Shortly after, Jang-gu received a call from his colleague saying that someone had inquired about Pluto at the fortune-telling shop. Jang-gu immediately summoned the fortune teller for questioning. What they discovered was that Jang-gu had known from the beginning that this was an astrological symbol and had warned all the fortune-telling shops in the area. When he questioned her, it turned out that the person who had visited the shop was the man with the eye patch. Jang-gu immediately added Dong-su to the list of suspects. Meanwhile, San-hee was spending the night at Jang Kop's house. She couldn't sleep and wandered around the house. By chance, she found Jang Kop's art notebook and couldn't resist flipping through it. Doubts began to fill her mind, and shortly after, the fourth body appeared. San-hee saw the pictures on the news and had a horrifying realization. The victim's features matched exactly the designs in Jang Kop's notebook. The police were in chaos, and if the killer was indeed following astrology in his crimes, the next significant date would be January 6th. Dong-su blended in with the crowd to observe the events, but unexpectedly, organ hunters discovered him, broke through the police's security perimeter, and started chasing him. The police were right behind them. When they saw Dong-su, he quickly jumped from the stairs, but someone was waiting underground and tried to catch him. However, Dong-su noticed that his reflexes had become sharper and managed to avoid the attacker's blows. Eric, who was behind him, lunged forward and cut Dong-su's armor, grabbing his severed hand out of curiosity to see how Dong-su would reattach it. Moments later, structures emerged from Dong-su's wound and began reconstructing the severed hand. Before Eric could grab him, someone unexpected, Airang, struck him. Police sirens began to echo outside, and Airang quickly pulled Dong-su away, and they escaped together. Later, Airang saved her number in Dong-su's phone, but he didn't want to deal with her and preferred to walk away. At the company, San-hee went to the rooftop to talk privately with Jang Kop. She told him she had seen the art notebook and asked if he was the killer. At that moment, the phone rang, revealing San-hee's hidden partner, who came out embarrassed and apologized. Jang Kop laughed mockingly, took off his jacket to cover San-hee, and beat her until she lost consciousness. Then he shoved her male colleague toward the photos, leaving him hanging in the middle. Moments later, San-hee's phone rang, and her ringtone started playing, causing Jang Kop's eye to ache. Dong-su saw the synchronized scenes and rushed toward the company building but arrived too late. Jang Kop had thrown San-hee off the building, and her body exploded in front of Dong-su. Afterward, Jang Kop continued and went to San-hee, who was still alive, and violently broke her neck. Dong-su was horrified by the scenes he was witnessing through the visual connection. At that moment, San-hee's phone stopped ringing, and Jang Kop's eye pain disappeared. The cunning killer immediately realized that his eye pain might be related to the song. Dong-su took advantage of the chaos and tried to enter the company unnoticed. However, he didn't realize that Jang Kop was behind him. He climbed the stairs, but Jang Kop sensed his footsteps and cautiously hid in the darkness. When Dong-su entered the office, Jang Kop grabbed his jacket and suddenly appeared. Dong-su coincidentally turned his head and noticed the jacket, immediately running to the bathroom to catch him. He grabbed the person washing their hands and asked where the jacket was, but Jankap was hiding in the adjacent stall. The other person left the bathroom without saying anything. Dong-soo realized the killer was there and quickly searched until he found the locked stall. He tried to climb from the adjacent stall, but Jankap deliberately hid his appearance from Dong-soo, standing with his back to him. Suddenly, he pulled out a carving tool and pinned Dong-soo's hand to the wall. Dong-soo left the stall in pain. Suddenly, a security guard entered without hearing any explanation and pinned Dong-soo to the ground. Dong-soo saw the killer's leather shoe and grabbed it in frustration. Jankap looked down to assess the situation and noticed the wounds on Dong-soo's hand were healing rapidly. The guard took Dong-soo downstairs, and on the way, they encountered San-hee's close friend, who immediately recognized him. She attacked him with full force, removing the patch covering his eye. The people around were terrified and began retreating, whispering that Jankap had no eye. Jankap was in the crowd and overheard this, so he quietly left the scene. The guard was ready to take Dong-soo to the police station, but at the last moment, Airang intervened, pretending to be a passerby. She quickly stunned the guards with an electric shock and cut the plastic ties binding Dong-soo's hands. Airang threw the stun gun to Dong-soo, who used it to stun the guards and escape with her from the company. Later, the police arrived at the scene to review the surveillance footage. Although Dong-soo's actions were suspicious, the timing of his entry into the building almost coincided with the moment the body fell, leading them to rule out his involvement in the crime. Jang-gu, however, focused on the company, especially when the suspect was apprehended and mentioned the jacket, which made Jang-gu uneasy. Jang-gu went to speak with the commander. The deceased team, however, did not provide any useful information, so Aaron told him about the existence of the links or connections, and explained that they were accomplished by those people when she was young. This is what sparked her great interest in the topic of connections. Additionally, the organ hunters wanted to investigate the matter and learn more about people like Dong-soo, who have these connections and are linked to the largest local company, Zhonggal Pharmaceuticals. People say they were modified through experiments on children's medicines, and as a result, they gained extraordinary self-healing abilities. Dong-soo realized that Aaron knew a lot of information, so he confessed to her everything that happened to him. They decided to form a temporary alliance. That night, Dong-soo had another vision of murder. Jankap was watching Dong-soo's video online and confirmed that the pain in his eye was linked to a specific song. Moreover, he recognized Dong-soo's voice. Dong-soo also discovered from the footage that this song could activate the connections. Aaron believed that this killer was not easy to deal with and advised Dong-soo to be cautious in his actions. Since Dong-soo's song was not protected by intellectual property rights, it was covered and re-recorded by a famous singer. Jankap discovered this singer and arranged to meet him under the pretext of making him the face of a specific product advertisement. Fortunately, Dong-soo did not appear, and all the money was donated. At that time, Jankap was unable to find the person he was looking for. However, Aaron made new developments while working as an organ hunter. She discovered that Jankap was very ill and had little time left. The assistant hunter, Eugene, was monitoring him to see if there was anything unusual about his eyes. Suddenly, chaos erupted in the earpiece Eugene was wearing, and it turned out that the small pet the hunter kept had disappeared. Everyone started searching for it anxiously and discovered a spying device had been implanted. The long-haired man immediately thought of Aaron because she had been with them for a while and claimed she was just charging her pen. In the end, it turned out she had secretly planted the spying device. At that moment, Aaron met Eugene and was able to locate the killer's apartment through him. She shared this information with Dong-soo. While they were talking, Dong-soo's eye began to hurt, and he saw Jankap drawing him. Jankap had already figured out the identity of the eye's owner and wrote in his notebook, "This time, it's my turn to find him." Not only that, but he also showed Dong-soo his designs. And this time, the target was 3 little girls. Jankap then drove off to find Dong-soo. That night, Jankap lured Dong-soo into the street, and Dong-soo was arrested by the police. The police immediately began interrogating Dong-soo, who tried to explain to them that he could see visual visions connected to the cases. Jankap, due to his mystical seriousness, was ready to believe this explanation. Dong-soo took advantage of the opportunity and revealed the new group of potential victims. The two decided to talk in a place away from surveillance to discuss the matter in detail. Dong-soo twisted his wrist to remove the handcuffs and then returned to normal in front of Jankap, quickly explaining his physical abilities gained from a transplant operation and his ability to share visual visions with the killer. Dong-soo asked the police to release him, as he was the only way to catch the killer. However, Jankap objected to his release. Dong-soo had no choice but to remove the handcuffs again, jump out of the window, and escape from the police station. Afterward, Dong-soo deliberately set fire to an empty school to prevent harm to the children. He then called and warned the police department, demanding that all elementary schools be closed, or he would burn them all. Jang Cobb quickly submitted a request to close all elementary schools under the pretext of a terrorist threat. Meanwhile, Jang Cobb captured the doctor and extracted information about the connection. After obtaining the necessary information, he killed the doctor without hesitation. Eugene, who was responsible for tracking, noticed Jang Cobb's absence and decided to go to his house to investigate. Erin followed him, but at one point, Eugene disappeared. She ran quickly to check, but she fell into an ambush. Erin responded by attacking and killing the person. The next day, citizens discovered Eugene's body. Erin advised Dong-soo not to try to return home during this period and suggested a place for him to hide. Dong-soo, curious, asked her why she was helping him. At that moment, Erin made a small cut on her hand while holding his hand. Her wound healed slowly, revealing that she also had a connection like Dong-soo. Dong-soo was happy to find someone like him, but danger was approaching. Later, Jang Cobb kidnapped the famous singer and issued a challenge to Dong-soo using the connection. Jang Cobb used his hand to dig into the singer's wound, intending to show the scene to Dong-soo, and demanded he face him directly. He then raised a metal hook and struck the singer until he lost consciousness. Dong-soo decided to search for Jang Cobb, but unexpectedly, an organ hunter appeared and kidnapped Dong-soo's grandfather, whom he knew. Erin asked Dong-soo to save his grandfather, while she would stay behind to confront the hunter. Dong-soo arrived at the location, but before he could free his grandfather, he fell into a trap and was severely injured. The hunter tied Dong-soo's hands and was about to kill his grandfather. Seeing the situation, Dong-soo clenched his teeth and struck the hunter. Unexpectedly, both his hands were cut off. Although they healed quickly, the pain was real. After Erin defeated the hunter, she went searching for Dong-soo. She found him imprisoned in the cold room and was about to rescue him but fell into an ambush and was injured by Jang Cobb. Erin managed to heal herself quickly, and Jang Cobb was thrilled. He was curious about how another person had the same healing ability, and wondered if the ability could be inherited by future generations. Erin sarcastically replied, asking if he planned to take over her body and have children with Dong-soo. Jang Cobb was annoyed by her tone and struck her with a sword. The two engaged in a battle, and surprisingly, Jang Cobb's abilities were superior to Erin's. He threw her down the stairs, breaking her wrist, but it quickly healed and returned to normal. At that moment, they heard the sound of car engines outside as Jang Jo arrived at the scene. When the others arrived, Jang Cobb tried to escape through the back door, but Erin seized the opportunity to save Dong-soo, asking him to flee while she was occupied with other matters. The giant standing at the door clashed with Jang Jo, who was armed. The police fired mud bullets, causing the giant to fall to the ground. But suddenly, the bullet wounds disappeared, and the giant rose again, striking Jang Jo. Later, it was revealed that Jang Cobb had stabbed the young officer who tried to enter through the window to help. Jang Cobb waited for Dong-soo, holding a knife and humming a song that activated their connection. Dong-soo saw himself through Jang Cobb's right eye, creating a strange visual effect as if they were truly one entity. Jang Cobb took a gun and aimed it at Dong-soo, wanting to test whether bullets were faster than Dong-soo's healing ability. Jang Cobb began shooting continuously at Dong-soo, but Dong-soo kept running toward him despite the bullets piercing his body. The blood spraying from his wounds quickly returned to his body. Even his left eye was injured. When Jang Cobb ran out of bullets, Dong-soo grabbed him by the neck. At that moment, Dong-soo felt sharp pain, and the wound in his eye began to heal. The exploded eyeball returned to its natural state. Jang Cobb covered his right eye, and Dong-soo pierced it. Structures emerged from the empty eye socket, and his original eye began to respond and return to its owner. In the end, Dong-soo successfully regained his eye. He grabbed Jang Cobb's head and began striking him violently. Then, he raised a knife and was about to kill him, but Officer Jang Jo stopped him, holding Dong-soo's hand and telling him to leave the criminal to the police instead of becoming a murderer. It turned out Erin hadn't killed Jang Jo and had preserved the final line. Dong-soo was convinced by Jang Jo's words and threw the weapon away. Suddenly, Erin felt a new chill and pulled Dong-soo, telling him they were coming and that they needed to leave quickly. The two ran out of the factory, leaving Jang Jo behind, who suddenly started bleeding from his nose. But that wasn't the only strange thing. Structures emerged from Jang Cobb's eye socket, and the transplanted singer's finger felt a slight pulse, as if it was being called. Outside the abandoned factory, helicopters blocked Dong-soo's path. A new storm was about to begin, and the season ended here. This will be the end of our story today. Tell us your opinion about the summary in the comments. If you liked today's video, give it a like and subscribe so you can see our upcoming summaries. See you in the next video.